The display showed records dating back hundreds of years. Species after species had been subjected to the Council's cruel research. Some had been driven to extinction. Others had been modified, their genetic code altered to serve Council purposes. They did this to everyone they encountered. Du Hyun said quietly. Any civilization too weak to fight back became their test subjects. More transmissions arrived from across Council space. The Meridians, a species of energy beings, offered the locations of hidden Council weapon caches. The Vorathi, masters of bioengineering, provided details of Council leadership movements. Admiral Yunhai's tactical display updated constantly as new allies emerged from the shadows. The Council's iron grip on its member species was crumbling in the face of humanity's successful resistance. The Council fleet is in disarray, her tactical officer reported. 3 of their primary battle groups have withdrawn from their assigned positions. Their commanders are refusing orders from Central Command. The Council's mistake was becoming clear. They had believed their power was absolute, that fear would keep their subject species in line forever. They had never considered what would happen when someone successfully stood up to them. In a secure conference room, Earth's military leadership met with representatives from their new allies. The Iridian commander's mandibles clicked as he shared tactical data. A Meridian general glowed with barely contained energy as she outlined Council weak points. They never let us communicate with each other, the Meridian explained. Each species was isolated, made to believe they were alone in their suffering. But now, a Vorathi scientist interrupted, his tentacles waving in agitation. We have gathered evidence for centuries, records of their crimes, locations of their secret facilities. We were too afraid to use it, until now. General Du Hyun received an urgent update from one of Earth's stealth ships. They had located another research facility, larger than the first. The scans showed thousands of test subjects from dozens of species. How many? He asked, his voice hard. At least 20 facilities of similar size scattered across Council space, his intelligence officer reported, each one conducting the same kinds of experiments we saw in the first facility. Admiral Yunhai coordinated with their new allies, developing a plan to strike all the facilities simultaneously. The Council's overconfidence had left them vulnerable. They had never expected their victims to unite against them. The Council's high speaker is demanding our surrender, her communications officer reported with a touch of irony. They're threatening to deploy their ultimate weapons. They don't understand, Yunhai said. They still think this is about military power. They don't realize this is about justice. More evidence emerged as their allies shared centuries of accumulated data. The Council hadn't just been conducting research. They had been systematically exploiting and experimenting on any species they considered inferior. Their entire civilization is built on this, Du Hyun realized as he studied the reports. Their technological advancement, their supposed superiority, all of it came from experimenting on other species. The Council's desperate attempts to maintain control only hastened their collapse. When they tried to threaten their subject species into submission, more broke away. When they attempted to hide their crimes, more evidence emerged. We're receiving a transmission from the Council's inner systems, Yunhai's officer reported. 3 of their core worlds are in open revolt. Their own people are turning against them. The Council's greatest mistake hadn't been attacking humans. It had been believing they could continue their cruel practices forever without consequences. Now, as their empire crumbled around them, they were learning the cost of their arrogance. Send word to all allied forces, Yunhai ordered. The next phase begins in 12 hours. We're going to free every last prisoner from those facilities. The Council had thought humans were weak. They had dismissed humanity as primitive, as test subjects to be studied and discarded. Instead, they had awakened a force that would bring their entire empire crashing down. And they had given all their former victims a reason to rise up and help. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of his flagship Justice, watching as another Council military base disappeared in a carefully controlled quantum detonation. His battle group had struck 7 targets in the past 12 hours, and each strike had been precise. Military infrastructure destroyed, civilian areas untouched. As the Terra Nova's medical team worked to stabilize Myre, Park stood at the bridge window, watching the stars. He thought about the peace humanity had maintained with the Council for the past decade. He thought about all the trade agreements, the technological exchanges, the diplomatic relations. All of that was over now. The Council had made a mistake that would cost them everything. They had assumed their power made them untouchable. They had believed their authority was truly absolute. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 3 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean's surface, General Du-hyun walked through corridors that officially didn't exist. The underground facility, known only as Deep Point, had been built in secret over the past decade. Its construction had been hidden from even the Galactic Council's most sophisticated scanning technology. The general stopped at a massive vault door, placing his hand on the scanner. As the security systems verified his identity, he thought about the weight of what he was about to reveal. Behind him, admirals and generals from Earth's combined forces waited in tense silence. "What you're about to see," Du-hyun said as the door opened, "has been Earth's best-kept secret since we first met the Council." The vault opened into an enormous chamber. Suspended in protective fields were devices that seemed to bend light around them. They looked deceptively small for what they could do. "The quantum arsenal," Du-hyun announced. "Weapons that don't just destroy matter. They tear apart the fabric of space itself." Admiral Chen stepped forward, his eyes wide. "How long have we had these?" "We began development the day after first contact," Du-hyun explained. "When we saw how advanced the Council was, we knew we needed something they couldn't defend against, something they wouldn't expect from primitive humans." In another part of the facility, scientists demonstrated the weapon's capabilities through holographic simulations. The assembled military leaders watched in stunned silence as space itself twisted and tore under the quantum weapon's effects. "The Council's shields are useless against these," a chief scientist explained. "You can't block something that attacks space itself. One hit from these weapons can tear a Council battleship apart at the quantum level." Meanwhile, on the far side of the moon, Fleet Commander Ta-hyun inspected the newest addition to Earth's hidden fleet. The stealth ships looked like shadows given form, their hulls covered in materials that absorbed all light and energy. "Status report," he ordered, walking through the lunar shipyard's main assembly area. "Final calibrations are complete on all 50 ships, sir," his chief engineer reported. "The stealth systems are performing better than expected. In tests, even Council sensors couldn't detect them at point-blank range." The stealth fleet represented another secret Earth had kept from the Council. While showing them outdated rocket technology and basic ion drives, humanity had been developing ships that could slit through any defense undetected. Back at Deep Point, General Du-hyun activated the facility's main tactical display. It showed the positions of Council forces gathering at the edge of the solar system. Their ships were impressive, massive battlecruisers that could destroy whole planets with conventional weapons. "They think they know what we're capable of," he said to the assembled leaders. "They've seen our public military technology. They think they know our strengths and weaknesses." A junior officer rushed into the room with an urgent update. The Council's high speaker had just broadcast a message across all frequencies. The general played it for everyone to hear. "These human threats are nothing but primitive posturing," the high speaker's translated voice declared. "Their weapons are centuries behind ours. Their ships are barely worthy of being called spacecraft. If they persist in this defiance, we will have no choice but to demonstrate our true power." The assembled human leaders exchanged knowing looks. The Council's arrogance would be their downfall. The massive research vessel Terra Nova floated quietly in the darkness of space, its dark hull barely visible against the starlit background. Inside the bridge, Captain Hanbin Park's hands trembled as he stared at the holographic display. The soft blue light from the screen cast eerie shadows across his face, highlighting the growing horror in his eyes. "Captain, we've confirmed the location." First Officer Ji-woo Kim's voice was steady, but her face had lost all color. The science team's emergency beacon is active inside the Galactic Council research facility. The science team had gone missing 3 weeks ago during what should have been a routine planetary survey. Their sudden disappearance had triggered a massive search operation, but the Council had denied any knowledge of their whereabouts. Now, the truth was staring them in the face. "Show me the facility schematics," Park ordered, his throat tight. The holographic display shifted, revealing a massive structure floating in space. Red dots indicated life signs, and one specific cluster caught his attention. There, Section Delta 7. Those are human biosignatures. Security teams moved swiftly through the facility's corridors, their boots making no sound in the artificial gravity. The Council's security forces offered no resistance. They couldn't, not with the emergency protocols that Earth had negotiated during first contact. Any human distress beacon automatically granted Earth forces full access rights. The teams found the adult members of the science team first. They were alive but heavily sedated in medical pods. Dr. Lee Soo-min, the team's lead scientist, was conscious enough to form words. Her first question chilled everyone to the bone. "Where is Mireille? Where is my daughter?" Mireille, only 12 years old, had accompanied her mother on what was supposed to be an educational trip. The search intensified, and 20 minutes later, they found her. The sight made hardened security officers turn away in disgust. Mireille lay strapped to a medical table, surrounded by various instruments and machines. Her small body showed signs of multiple surgical procedures, and her vital signs were dangerously weak. Dr. Yunwoo, the Terra Nova's chief medical officer, rushed to the girl's side. "Get me a medical stasis unit now," she shouted, her professional calm cracking as she saw the extent of the damage. "She's been subjected to. These are deliberate trauma tests. They were testing her pain responses, her healing capacity." The facility's computer systems told an even darker story. Clinical notes detailed every experiment, every cut, every broken bone, every induced trauma. The researchers had documented everything with cold precision, treating the child as nothing more than a test subject. "Captain," Ji-woo's voice came through Park's communicator. "The Council's representative is requesting to speak with you." Park found the Council member waiting in the facility's conference room. The alien's tall, elegant form showed no sign of concern or remorse. Its crystalline eyes regarded Park with what seemed like mild curiosity. "Captain Park," the Council representative's translator conveyed its words in perfect English. "I trust you understand this research was necessary. Human physiology is unique in many ways. Understanding your species' remarkable healing capabilities could benefit countless civilizations." Park's hands clenched into fists. "She's a child," he said, his voice barely controlled. "A 12-year-old child. Age is irrelevant to scientific inquiry," the representative responded. "The younger specimen provided better data on developmental processes. I assure you, the research was conducted within Council guidelines." Park turned away, unable to look at the creature anymore. He activated his neural link to the ship's communication system. "Terra Nova, this is the captain. Prepare a full data package for Earth Command. Include everything: medical scans, facility logs, security footage, everything." "Captain," the Council representative's tone held a warning. "Consider carefully before you take any rash action. The Council's authority in these matters is absolute." Park looked back at the alien, and for the first time in his life, he understood pure hatred. "You tortured a child. You took a little girl and cut her open to see how she would heal. You broke her bones to study how they would mend." He walked to the door, then paused. "There won't be any diplomatic solution to this. No negotiations, no compromises. You should have learned more about humans before you did this. You should have learned what happens when someone hurts our children." The message he sent to Earth Command was brief but comprehensive. Within hours, every human government would know what had happened here. Every human being would see the evidence of the Council's barbarism. Begin final preparations, General Du Hyun ordered. Move the quantum arsenal to deployment positions. Have the stealth fleet ready for immediate launch. In the lunar shipyards, Commander Ta Hyun received the orders and smiled grimly. His crews had trained for years for this moment. They could pilot their ships through the heart of a Council fleet without being detected. All hands to battle stations, he announced over the shipyard's communication system. This is not a drill. Prepare for immediate deployment. The stealth ships powered up silently, their systems barely registering on even the most sensitive instruments. In their holds, they carried smaller versions of the quantum arsenal, ready to be delivered to the heart of Council space. Deep beneath the Pacific, General Du Hyun made one final inspection of the quantum weapons. Each one represented years of research, countless hours of testing, and humanity's determination to never be helpless against advanced alien civilizations. The Council thought they could treat us like lab rats, he said to his staff. They thought we were primitive, harmless, easy to control. They forgot one important thing about humans: we're at our most dangerous when we're underestimated. As the final preparations continued, reports came in from across the solar system. Earth's conventional forces were in position, ready to engage the Council fleet. They would serve as the perfect distraction, keeping the Council's attention while the real threat approached unseen. Send the coded signal to all commands, General Du Hyun ordered. Operation Retribution begins at dawn. In the darkness of the lunar shipyards, Commander Ta Hyun's stealth fleet waited like predators ready to strike. In the depths of the Pacific, the quantum arsenal stood ready to tear reality itself apart. The Council had wanted to study human potential. They were about to experience it firsthand. At exactly 300 Earth Standard Time, Commander Sun Mi's stealth cruiser, Shadow Blade, emerged from its hiding spot behind a small moon. Her ship moved like a ghost through space, completely invisible to the Council's advanced detection systems. All hands, battle stations, she ordered quietly, though there was no need to whisper in space. Primary target is in visual range. Weapon systems hot. The Council's primary research facility loomed ahead, a massive structure that looked like a gleaming silver spider suspended in space. Its outer rings spun slowly, generating artificial gravity for its inhabitants. The facility's defenses were impressive, but they were all pointed in the wrong direction. Team leaders, confirm ready status. Sun Mi commanded, watching her tactical display. Lieutenant Jin Ho checked his assault team's gear one final time. Their stealth suits were the most advanced Earth had ever produced, completely masking their life signs. His team of 12 would be the first to breach the facility. The attack began without warning. Precision quantum torpedoes struck the facility's power cores, while conventional weapons targeted defensive systems. The Council's mighty shields flickered and died before they even detected a threat. Multiple direct hits, Sun Mi's weapons officer reported. Their primary power grid is down. They're switching to emergency systems. Inside the facility, alarms blared as systems failed. Council security forces rushed to their stations, only to find their weapons wouldn't respond. The quantum strikes had done more than just damage the facility. They had torn apart the very fabric of space-time around key systems. Jin Ho's team breached through an emergency airlock, moving like shadows through the corridors. Their helmet displays showed clear maps of the facility, courtesy of intelligence gathered over months of surveillance. First target reached, Jin Ho reported as they approached the main security center. Beginning breach. The Council guards inside never saw what hit them. Non-lethal quantum pulses dropped them unconscious before they could raise their weapons. Jin Ho's team secured the center within seconds, gaining control of the facility's internal systems. Command, we have control of security systems, Jin Ho reported. Beginning scan for containment levels. The scans revealed something worse than they'd expected. The lower levels of the facility held dozens of containment cells. Life signs from multiple species registered on their sensors, and many showed signs of severe trauma. Commander Sun Mi, "We're detecting at least 30 different victims down here," Jin-Ho reported, his voice tight with anger. "Not just humans. They've been experimenting on species from all over the galaxy." Sun Mi's jaw clenched. "Understood. Medical teams are moving in. Get those people out." As Jin-Ho's team moved deeper into the facility, they encountered more security forces. The Council guards seemed shocked by the humans' advanced technology, their weapons proving useless against Earth's stealth suits. The first containment cell they breached held a young alien child, its body showing signs of surgical procedures, similar to what they'd done to Mirai. The child's species was unknown to them, but its fear was all too familiar. "It's okay," Jin-Ho said, activating his suit's universal translator. "We're here to help. You're safe now." Cell after cell revealed similar horrors, species from across the galaxy, all subjected to the Council's cruel experiments. Some were barely alive, others showed signs of repeated surgical procedures. Medical teams rushed in with stasis units and emergency treatment pods. The Council's research had left many of the victims in critical condition. "Command, we need more medical support," Jin-Ho called. "There are more victims than we expected, many critical." Above the facility, Commander Sun Mi coordinated the arrival of additional medical ships. The stealth fleet maintained its invisible perimeter, ensuring no Council reinforcements could interfere with the rescue operation. "Council response fleet detected," her sensor officer reported. 3 heavy cruisers approaching from Sector 7. Sun Mi smiled grimly. "Deploy quantum mines along their approach vector. Let's show them what happens when they underestimate primitive humans." The Council ships never saw the mines. Their mighty vessels were torn apart by weapons they had deemed impossible for humans to develop. Their distress calls brought more ships, which met the same fate. In the lower levels, Jin-Ho's team reached the facility's main database. While medical teams evacuated the victims, they downloaded everything. Research data, personnel files, facility locations, evidence of the Council's crimes against not just humanity, but dozens of species. "Command, data retrieval complete," Jin-Ho reported. "You need to see this. They have similar facilities across Council space. This wasn't just one rogue operation, it was systematic." Commander Sun Mi received the data with growing anger. The Council hadn't just tortured Mirai. They had been conducting these experiments for centuries, believing their power made them untouchable. "All teams, complete your objectives," she ordered. "Once all victims are evacuated, we're going to demonstrate exactly what our quantum weapons can do to a research facility." As the last rescue ships pulled away, carrying their precious cargo of survivors, Sun Mi gave the order. Quantum warheads struck with surgical precision, tearing the facility apart at the subatomic level. The Council's mighty research center vanished into a quantum void, taking its horrible secrets with it. This was just the first strike. Across Council space, more stealth ships were moving into position. The Council had thought humans were primitive savages. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Admiral Yunai sat in her command center beneath Seoul, studying the flood of incoming transmissions. The screens around her displayed messages from species she had never heard of before, members of the Galactic Council who had maintained silence for centuries. Another transmission from the Iridian systems, her communications officer reported. They're offering detailed scans of Council military installations in their sector. The Iridians were not alone. As news of Earth's successful strike spread across Council space, more species began reaching out. Each message told a similar story, of suffering under Council rule, of watching their children vanish into research programs, of being too weak individually to resist. "Put the Iridian representative through to my private channel," Yanhai ordered. The alien that appeared on her screen was insectoid, its compound eyes reflecting the light of distant stars. "Admiral," the Iridian spoke through its translator, "my people have suffered under Council rule for 3 centuries. What you found in that facility, they did the same to us, to our children. We want to help." In his underground command center, General Du Hyun was reviewing the data recovered from the destroyed research facility. Each file revealed new horrors. The Council's experimentation program hadn't just targeted humans. It had been their standard practice for dealing with any species they deemed interesting. "Sir," his intelligence chief called out, "you need to see this." "Status report," he called out, studying the tactical display. "Military base destroyed." "Sir," his weapons officer responded. "No civilian casualties. Their weapon stockpiles have been completely neutralized." The Council had built their military bases near civilian populations, thinking it would protect them. They hadn't counted on humanity's ability to strike with surgical precision. The quantum weapons could destroy a military installation while leaving the buildings next to it completely untouched. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Yu Jin's Special Forces team moved silently through another Council research facility. Their stealth suits made them invisible to Council sensors as they approached the detention blocks. "Team 2 in position," she whispered into her comm. "Beginning breach sequence." The facility's guards never saw them coming. Non-lethal quantum pulses dropped the Council's security forces before they could raise the alarm. Within minutes, Yu Jin's team had control of the entire detention block. "Life signs detected in multiple cells," her scanner operator reported. "At least 30 different species, many showing signs of recent experimentation." The rescue operation moved quickly. Medical teams rushed in with stasis units while combat teams secured the facility. Each rescued prisoner provided more evidence of the Council's crimes. Back in space, Captain Minho received new intelligence from their allies. The Iridians had located a major Council fleet base. The Meridians provided details of its defenses. The Vorathi offered biological weapons that could incapacitate Council forces without harming civilians. Multiple Council warships detected, his sensor officer called out. "They're trying to evacuate their command staff." "Not this time," Minho said firmly. "Deploy quantum mines along their escape routes. Let's show them there's nowhere left to run." In the research facility, Yu Jin's team reached the central database. While medical teams evacuated the prisoners, her tech specialists downloaded everything. Research data, personnel files, facility locations. "Captain," she reported to Minho, "you need to see this. They weren't just experimenting on their prisoners. They were using the research to enhance their own species. Everything they claim makes them superior. It was stolen from their victims." The Council leadership had retreated to their fortress worlds, massive planets surrounded by supposedly impenetrable defenses. They thought themselves safe behind their shields and weapons. They were wrong. "All ships, execute attack pattern Delta," Minho ordered. His battle group moved with perfect coordination, their quantum weapons tearing holes in space itself. The Council's mighty defenses meant nothing against weapons that ignored the normal rules of physics. Yu Jin's team found more horrors as they moved deeper into the facility. The Council hadn't just experimented on other species, they had been deliberately altering them, trying to create slave races suited to their needs. "Get everything," she ordered her tech specialists. "Every file, every record. The galaxy needs to know what they did here." The Council's fortress worlds began to fall. Their leadership fled from one stronghold to another, but Earth's stealth ships were always waiting. The Council's own subject species helped track them, eager to see their tormentors brought to justice. Another transmission from the Council leadership, Minho's communications officer reported. "They're offering to negotiate." "No negotiations," Minho replied. "Not after what they've done. Justice doesn't negotiate with torturers." The rescue operations continued across Council space. Each liberated facility revealed new horrors, new victims, new evidence of the Council's crimes. But they also found something unexpected: hope. "Sir," Yu Jin reported to her superiors, "the prisoners we're rescuing. Many of them are starting to help us. They're offering information, helping with translations, even assisting our medical teams." The Council had thought they could break their victims' spirits. Instead, they had created an army of survivors determined to see justice done. Multiple Council command ships detected. Minho's tactical officer called out. They're making a final stand at their capital world. The Council's remaining forces had gathered for one last battle. Their mighty fleet formed up around their throne world, weapons ready, shields at maximum power. All ships, battle formations, Minho ordered. Remember our mission. Protect civilian lives. Destroy military targets. Capture leadership. The battle was brief but intense. Council ships discovered too late that their weapons were useless against Earth's quantum-enhanced fleet. Their shields couldn't stop attacks that came from outside normal spacetime. On the ground, Yujin's teams breached the Council's central command bunker. They found the leadership cowering in their secure rooms, still believing their power would protect them. Secure them, Yujin ordered. They'll face justice for what they've done. Not just to humans, but to every species they've tormented. As the last Council strongholds fell, Minho received a message from Earth Command. The data recovered from the research facilities have been shared across the galaxy. Every species now knew the truth about the Council's rise to power. It's over, he said quietly, watching the Council's capital surrender. Their empire of pain is finished. The retribution they had feared for so long had finally come. Not just from humans, but from all the species they had wronged. In the end, their greatest weapon had been turned against them. They had united their victims into an unstoppable force for justice. Sunlight streamed through the shattered dome of the Council's great chamber, casting rainbow patterns through the crystalline debris. Where once the Council's high speaker had proclaimed absolute authority, representatives from 50 different species now gathered in a circle of equality. Admiral Yunhai stood at the simple podium, her dress uniform gleaming in the light. Around her, beings of all forms, crystalline, energy, biological, even gaseous, waited in respectful silence. We gather here not to create another empire, she began, her words translated into 50 different languages simultaneously. We come together to ensure that what happened under the Council's rule never happens again. The Iridian representatives' compound eyes reflected the light as they spoke. For centuries, we lived in fear. Our children vanished into their research facilities. We were too weak to resist alone. But we are not alone anymore, the Meridian delegate added, their energy form pulsing with emotion. Together, we have the strength to protect each other. The new Federation's charter was simple but powerful. No species could claim authority over another. All technological and medical advances would be shared freely. Most importantly, the rights of all sentient beings, especially children, would be protected above all else. Back on Earth, Mayray stood before the eternal flame at the Federation Memorial. At 25, she carried herself with quiet strength, the scars of her past visible only in her eyes. The memorial's crystal walls held the names of every known victim of Council experimentation, a list that stretched for hundreds of meters. The gardens are beautiful this spring, her mother, Dr. Lee Sumin, said softly. She had aged in the years since their rescue, but her determination had never wavered. As one of the Federation's chief legal architects, she had worked tirelessly to create laws that would prevent any repeat of the Council's atrocities. They're planting flowers from all member worlds, Mayray replied, watching alien children play in the memorial gardens. Species that had once been the Council's victims now played together freely, their laughter a testament to healing. In orbit above, the Federation's new combined fleet stood guard. Ships of human design flew alongside vessels created by their allies, all sharing the same mission: to protect, not to dominate. The last Council research facility was converted today, Sumin told her daughter. It's now a medical center, helping heal the victims of their experiments. Mireille nodded, touching the memorial wall gently. And the Council leadership? They'll spend the rest of their lives helping repair the damage they caused, her mother answered. Not in prison, but working alongside those they once tormented. Some are even beginning to understand what they did wrong. The Federation's headquarters had been built on Earth, a symbol of humanity's role in ending the Council's reign. But it wasn't a position of power. Rather, it was a responsibility to ensure the mistakes of the past were never repeated. The Iridian medical teams made another breakthrough. Sumin continued. They'd found a way to heal some of the genetic damage the Council caused. They're sharing the research with everyone. That was perhaps the greatest change from the Council's era. Knowledge was no longer hoarded or used as a weapon. Every advancement, every discovery was shared freely among all member species. The display showed records dating back hundreds of years. Species after species had been subjected to the Council's cruel research. Some had been driven to extinction. Others had been modified, their genetic code altered to serve Council purposes. They did this to everyone they encountered. Du Hyun said quietly. Any civilization too weak to fight back became their test subjects. More transmissions arrived from across Council space. The Meridians, a species of energy beings, offered the locations of hidden Council weapon caches. The Vorathi, masters of bioengineering, provided details of Council leadership movements. Admiral Yeonhai's tactical display updated constantly as new allies emerged from the shadows. The Council's iron grip on its member species was crumbling in the face of humanity's successful resistance. The Council fleet is in disarray, her tactical officer reported. 3 of their primary battle groups have withdrawn from their assigned positions. Their commanders are refusing orders from Central Command. The Council's mistake was becoming clear. They had believed their power was absolute. That fear would keep their subject species in line forever. They had never considered what would happen when someone successfully stood up to them. In a secure conference room, Earth's military leadership met with representatives from their new allies. The Iridian commander's mandibles clicked as he shared tactical data. A Meridian general glowed with barely contained energy as she outlined Council weak points. They never let us communicate with each other, the Meridian explained. Each species was isolated, made to believe they were alone in their suffering. But now, a Vorathi scientist interrupted, his tentacles waving in agitation. We have gathered evidence for centuries, records of their crimes, locations of their secret facilities. We were too afraid to use it, until now. General Du Hyun received an urgent update from one of Earth's stealth ships. They had located another research facility, larger than the first. The scans showed thousands of test subjects from dozens of species. How many? He asked, his voice hard. At least 20 facilities of similar size scattered across Council space, his intelligence officer reported, each one conducting the same kinds of experiments we saw in the first facility. Admiral Yeonhai coordinated with their new allies, developing a plan to strike all the facilities simultaneously. The Council's overconfidence had left them vulnerable. They had never expected their victims to unite against them. The Council's high speaker is demanding our surrender, her communications officer reported with a touch of irony. They're threatening to deploy their ultimate weapons. They don't understand, Yeonhai said. They still think this is about military power. They don't realize this is about justice. More evidence emerged as their allies shared centuries of accumulated data. The Council hadn't just been conducting research. They had been systematically exploiting and experimenting on any species they considered inferior. Their entire civilization is built on this, Du Hyun realized as he studied the reports. Their technological advancement, their supposed superiority, all of it came from experimenting on other species. The Council's desperate attempts to maintain control only hastened their collapse. When they tried to threaten their subject species into submission, more broke away. When they attempted to hide their crimes, more evidence emerged. We're receiving a transmission from the Council's inner systems, Yeonhai's officer reported. 3 of their core worlds are in open revolt. Their own people are turning against them. The Council's greatest mistake hadn't been attacking humans. It had been believing they could continue their cruel practices forever without consequences. Now, as their empire crumbled around them, they were learning the cost of their arrogance. Send word to all allied forces, Yeonhai ordered. The next phase begins in 12 hours. We're going to free every last prisoner from those facilities. The Council had thought humans were weak. They had dismissed humanity as primitive, as test subjects to be studied and discarded. Instead, they had awakened a force that would bring their entire empire crashing down. And they had given all their former victims a reason to rise up and help. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of his flagship Justice, watching as another Council military base disappeared in a carefully controlled quantum detonation. His battle group had struck 7 targets in the past 12 hours, and each strike had been precise. Military infrastructure destroyed, civilian areas untouched.